Hi, everyone. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. I'm Eric, and today I want to tell you my story. It's about someone I had known for years, someone I trusted, someone I was planning to marry. But in a single moment, everything changed. That moment didn't just reveal who she really was. It showed me what I had been ignoring for far too long. Before I get into what happened, let's go back to the beginning, to when things were good. Because believe it or not, they were good. At least, that's what I thought. Vanessa and I had been together for a long time. We weren't a couple that rushed into things. We had history. I supported her through every stage of her life, long before she landed her dream job at a top consulting firm. Back when she was struggling to find her footing and figure out her next step, I was right there by her side. I encouraged her, helped her prepare for interviews, and stayed up late listening to her vent about rejection emails. I believed in her, even when she doubted herself. And I never once made her feel like she wasn't good enough. Photography has always been my dream. It wasn't just a hobby for me. It was my career, my passion, my life. I invested everything into it. I worked hard, saved up, and bought the best camera gear I could afford. I built a strong portfolio from scratch, going from shooting small local events to having my work featured in well-known magazines. And I wasn't just scraping by. I was doing well. I was proud of what I had built. At first, Vanessa was proud of me too. I remember the way she used to talk about my work. She would tell people, "Eric is insanely talented. His photos are incredible." She would show my pictures to friends and brag about the time my work got published. I really thought she saw me for who I was, someone who had turned his passion into something real, something meaningful. I had no reason to believe that would ever change. But little by little, it did. At first, it was small comments that I didn't pay much attention to. Vanessa had just started her new job at the consulting firm, and I knew she was under a lot of pressure. Long hours, important clients, and a whole new world to adjust to. I figured if she was a little stressed, I could handle it. But then, the way she talked about my work started to change. It wasn't outright disrespectful, at least not at first. The first time it happened, we were at dinner, going over wedding plans. I was excited, talking about a new camera lens I had been saving up for. She sighed and said, "You should get a real job with a stable salary. Weddings are expensive, you know." She laughed after she said it, like it was a joke. I didn't think much of it then. A few weeks later, we were at the mall when she spotted a coworker. She waved at her but didn't call me over right away. When Vanessa came back to me, she casually said she hadn't called me over because she didn't know how to introduce me to her colleague. I remember just standing there, confused. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself she didn't mean anything by it. Maybe it was just an awkward moment, nothing more. But then, the third time, there was no mistaking what she meant. We were at home, having a normal conversation, when she suddenly said, "I mean, photography is nice and all, but it's not exactly a career, right?" She said it so casually, like it wasn't even worth thinking about. That was the moment it hit me. She wasn't joking. She actually believed that. She saw what I did, what I had built from the ground up, as just some side hobby, not a real profession. Still, I let it slide. I made excuses for her, convincing myself that she didn't mean any harm. After all, this was Vanessa, the woman I had loved for years. She had always supported me before, so I let it go. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Looking back, that was my first mistake. A few weeks later, Vanessa invited me as her +1 to her company's annual office party. The venue was upscale, a private event hall with glass walls, sleek modern decor, and a sea of well-dressed professionals who looked like they belonged there. Everyone had the same polished confidence, the same effortless smiles. I wasn't intimidated, not exactly, but I could feel the difference between their world and mine, the way they moved, the way they talked. It was all about deals, promotions, six-figure salaries. I knew I didn't fit that mold, but I wasn't ashamed of what I did. I loved my work. Vanessa introduced me to a small group of her colleagues, 4 or 5 of them, all holding drinks, chatting about work and travel. I stood beside her, nodding along as they discussed an upcoming project with a major client. Then one of them, a guy in a crisp navy suit, probably around our age, turned to me and asked, "So, Eric, what do you do?" His tone was polite, but I could already tell he had assumptions about me. Maybe he thought I worked in consulting, maybe in tech, something that fit the environment we were in. Before I could answer, Vanessa beat me to it. She let out a small, amused scoff, the kind that makes it clear she's about to say something funny. "Oh, Eric," she said, smiling as she swirled her drink. "His job is basically just taking fancy selfies for money." The second those words left her mouth, the entire group laughed. Not just a chuckle, not a polite laugh. This was full-on amusement, like she had just told the joke of the night. Some of them exchanged glances, smirking like they suddenly got something about me they hadn't before. One of the women even nodded and said, "Oh, that's cute." I stood there, feeling the laughter pressing around me. And for the first time, I saw Vanessa clearly. This wasn't just a slip-up, not an innocent joke. This was how she actually saw me, how she had probably always seen me. In her eyes, I was just a guy who took selfies for money. It hit me hard. All those small comments she had made before, the passive-aggressive remarks, the hesitation when people asked what I did, it all made sense now. She wasn't proud of me. She wasn't proud to be with me. To her, my career wasn't real, wasn't respectable enough to stand beside hers. And in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to spend my life with someone who looked down on me. I remember standing there, gripping my drink a little tighter than before. Then I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I set my drink down, looked Vanessa straight in the eye, and said, "If you don't respect what I do, then you don't respect me. And I won't spend my life with someone who belittles me." The room went dead silent. I could feel eyes shifting between me and Vanessa, waiting to see how she would respond. She just stood there, staring at me with wide eyes, her mouth slightly open. Then she let out a nervous laugh, like she could still brush this off, like this was still just another joke. But I wasn't laughing. I reached for her hand, slid the engagement ring off her finger, and slipped it into my pocket. Gasps, a couple of whispers. Someone near the bar muttered, "Damn." But I didn't linger to soak in their reactions. I didn't need an audience for this. Without another word, I turned and walked out, just a quiet, deliberate decision to remove myself from a place where I clearly wasn't valued. I didn't look back to see her face. I didn't need to, because for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where I stood. At first, Vanessa didn't reach out. Not a single text. Not a single call. Nothing. And honestly, I wasn't surprised. She had always been too proud to admit when she was wrong. Too proud to face any situation that made her look bad. After the party, she must have felt humiliated, not just because I left her standing there in front of her friends, but because I did it on my own terms. I wasn't the one being laughed at anymore. I was the one who walked away. And for someone like Vanessa, who cared so much about appearances, that had to sting. But then, weeks later, the silence broke. Out of nowhere, she sent a message. It was long, but the words were predictable. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I didn't mean it like that. You know I respect you. I was just joking, and I didn't realize how it came across. Can we talk?" I read it and just sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. If she had sent this message right after the party, maybe, just maybe, I would have believed she meant it. Maybe I would have thought she had a moment of poor judgment and was genuinely sorry. But after weeks of silence, after acting like nothing happened, no, this wasn't about regret. This was about damage control. She wasn't reaching out because she realized she had disrespected me. She was reaching out because she didn't like how it made her look, to friends, to family, to people expecting to be at our wedding. And that's when I knew. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I just saw things clearly for the first time. Vanessa had never been proud of me. She had tolerated my career, but she had never truly respected it. Vanessa wanted a fiancé who fit into her world, someone she could show off at work, someone with a title she wouldn't have to explain. And that wasn't me. It had never been me. So I replied, not out of spite, not to argue, just to close that chapter. I appreciate the message, Vanessa. I wish you all the best. I really do. But it's best if we both move on. Short, simple, final. She didn't respond. And I knew she wouldn't. That was the moment I knew I deserved better. I deserved someone who didn't just put up with my dreams, but actually believed in them. Someone who would never laugh at my passion, whether we were alone or in a room full of people. And once I accepted that, I knew what I had to do next. I packed my bags and left. Our small town had been my comfort zone for too long, and I wasn't going to sit there, haunted by memories of a life that almost happened. I had always dreamed about taking my photography to the next level, and there was only one place I knew I could do that: New York. It was intimidating. It was expensive. But for the first time in a long time, I was making a decision purely for me. No compromises. No doubts. Just a man chasing what he loves. And that felt like real freedom. I started saying yes to every opportunity: fashion shoots, events, travel gigs, anything that challenged me and expanded my portfolio. I worked harder than ever, but this time it felt different. It felt like I was building something that was mine, something no one could belittle. Months passed, and I wasn't just getting by. I was thriving. Then one day, I got an email that changed everything. One of my photographs had been shortlisted for a major international award. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I reread the email 3 times just to be sure. But no, it was real. Out of thousands of entries from all over the world, my work had been chosen. And when I finally saw my name listed as the winner, I just sat there staring at the screen, not because I couldn't believe it, but because I could. I had always believed in myself, even when others didn't. And now, the world was seeing what I had always known. I was damn good at what I do. I don't know if Vanessa ever saw the news. Maybe she regretted how things ended, or maybe she convinced herself that she was right all along. But honestly, I don't care. That part of my life is closed. What I do know is this: out of everything I gained after walking away, the biggest one wasn't the award. It wasn't the recognition. It was the fact that, for the first time in a long time, I was surrounded by people who actually valued me. People who saw my work for what it was: art, not just fancy selfies. And among them was someone who didn't just admire what I did, but respected it. Someone who saw me for who I was and never once made me feel small for it. Respect in a relationship is non-negotiable. That's something I learned the hard way. When someone repeatedly makes fun of your dreams, even if they laugh while saying it, even if they call it a joke, you need to pay attention. Because jokes like that, they're not harmless. They tell you exactly how that person sees you. And if they don't respect what you do, they don't respect you. Period. I told myself it was nothing, that she didn't mean it, that maybe I was being too sensitive. But looking back, I see it clearly. Someone who loves you doesn't belittle what makes you happy. They don't make you feel small just because your path doesn't look like theirs. I walked away because I knew staying meant losing myself. And trust me, it was hard. Ending an engagement in front of a room full of people? Not exactly how I pictured things going. But I'll tell you this: I have never once regretted choosing my self-respect over a relationship that made me feel like I wasn't enough. So, if you're in a situation like that, if you're with someone who constantly downplays your passion, take a step back and ask yourself, do I really want to spend my life proving my worth to someone who refuses to see it? Because you don't have to. The right person will see your value, without you having to convince them. Anyway, that's my story. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with something like this? What would you have done in my place? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you found this story interesting, hit that like button. It helps more than you know.